Welcome back. With the close of indoor dining, restaurant owners are rallying to save the restaurant industry, asking for funding, rent relief, and PPE, while also questioning why indoor dining is shutting down when, according to Governor Cuomo, they only account for 1.43% of the new COVID-19 cases. Here to tell us more about this effort is Jeffrey Garcia, president of the New York State Latino Restaurant Bar and Lounge Association. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, Jericho. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Can you tell us a little bit more about the New York State Latino Restaurant Bar and Lounge Association, please?
Hi, it was an association basically started back in 2016, and it was to advocate for Latino restaurant owners and bar and lounges who really didn't have a voice and many things that were going on throughout the city at the time. And one of the bills that we were working on at that time was the hookah bill, which then passed and basically made hookah. You needed a permit for hookah inside restaurants. So since then, we've been dealing with many issues going on in the industry. And then now we have this pandemic that has obviously affected not just this industry, but all. However, it feels that this industry has really like put the COVID and this pandemic on its back because we're the first ones to feel it. And we had a huge rally in Times Square where over 1,000 members, customers, industry leaders, and elected officials showed up to advocate for us because we are hurting right now.
And Jeffrey, describe the scene for me at that rally.
It was lively. People just, one of the chants that got to me the most was we want to work. Like basically owners and employees just want to get back to work at some capacity, at least the capacity we're at, or our counterparts in Long Island and Westchester. Westchester and Long Island, you can eat at 50% inside, even right now, even today, as we're close here in New York City, you can go to a restaurant in Long Island or Westchester and eat inside. And that is unfortunate because the density inside a restaurant is the same anywhere in the world, unless there is something that we don't know about, that the governor's just not telling us that the air is better in Long Island and Westchester and that we're not aware of.
You were quoted saying that the shutting down of indoor dining during the holidays when New York City restaurants are providing safety measures is the straw that broke the camel's back. Describe for me what you mean.
Absolutely. I mean, this is going to be devastating for many of these owners. They were already living on very thin margins and already had topped out loans. They have already used up the PPP that they had gotten. They had already used up the SBA loans that they have gotten. They really can't borrow any more money. And even with all that, why? Because in addition to getting back to business and getting back to work, the city, because they allowed us to do outdoor dining, we had to spend a lot of money building structures and devices to be able to, do outdoor dining. Then they tell us for indoor dining, you're gonna have to do these guidelines. PPE, you're gonna have to do things with your air filtration systems. You're gonna have to invest in dividers. You can only have a certain percentage of people. So all those investments cost money. They didn't give us money for that. As a matter of fact, the PPP that we got, 60% of it was supposed to be used for employees. And that's great and wonderful. But what happens to us now? There is no anything going on in Congress to pass the Restaurant Act, which would be specific, about $120 billion specific just for restaurants. And you know what? That would go a long way. If you're making us shut down, then you should be helping us. But again, folks just want to get back to work. We feel we should be open at least to the level of our counterparts and be able to work.
And do you think that you will have to do more rallies to really get your point across?
Well, I don't know if the effect was that quick, but as I was driving back from the rally, I heard that Mitch McConnell said that they're not leaving DC until they have a COVID bill. Did they hear our voice? I hope they heard our voice. I hope Governor Cuomo heard our voice. I hope he advocates for us and the states for us to get that bill passed because we need the funds. So you know what? We've been doing our job. We've been following the rules. Then you know what? They need to do their job and get us help.
And how has the association helped or provided resources, services, and information to business owners during this pandemic?
Well, through the efforts of the association, we were able to push for the second round of PPP through our local congressman, Adriano Espaillat. He was a great advocate for our association and our industry. So when we got the second round of PPP funding, we were able to work with Bonse Bank in the Bronx to get a lot of our members on board and help them receive those funds of PPP that they were most definitely entitled to during the first round, which they never got.
If the New York State Latino Restaurant Bar and Lounge Association could pitch and suggest alternatives to business practices that will benefit business owners and protect their patrons, what would these alternatives be?
Maybe what the governor should do is bring us to the table and see what mitigating things can we do to further, aside, because the rules that they had in place actually work. I mean, 1.4%, like you said, is the infection rate inside indoor dining. So that means the protocols that they had in place worked. Now, do they want to bring it down to zero? Do we want to mitigate that even more? Do we want to help out even more? Yes. Well, what do we need to do? Maybe go to single-use cups, single-use silverware or plasticware. Do some more disinfecting. Do some additional cleaning. One of the things I think that would be great as well is working with local healthcare providers to do testing for employees on a weekly basis. So all these little things that I feel can go a long way, because if 74% of all infections are happening indoors and in clandestine gatherings or at home, then why not get people out more? The mayor says he's going to start taking the train. He's advocating for people to take the train just to work and then go back into their, huddle at home with 20, 30 people and have parties at home. No, if they're out, at least when you're out, you're following certain amount of protocols, wearing masks, temperature checks, 6 feet distance. The location is cleaning bathrooms and areas every 20, 30 minutes. These are things that you don't normally do at home. And if you invite people over, chances are you're not wearing a mask at home or anyone else. So I think that obviously getting people out is a good thing, but getting people out safely. And I think that we've been doing that and we have accomplished that.
So, we're taping this today, December 15th. This is going to air on December 22nd. Do you have a deadline for your demands that you would like to be met before then or after that?
Well, yesterday, we should have been open back up yesterday. We should, at the very least, then open back up today. So it's not a demand. I think that he just needs to sit with us and be like, okay, how is it that we can help you guys? What is that we can do to, stop this spread? What is it that maybe you need to understand? Maybe he hasn't told us all the facts. Maybe he hasn't told us everything. But based on his own numbers, 1.4% is just not acceptable. And again, why is it acceptable to be open in Westchester and in Long Island, but not in New York City? Inside a restaurant, 10 people is 10 people, whether you're here or anywhere else in the world. If you want to talk about density, maybe I could have understood density in the summer months where there was so many people walking around the streets. But right now, with the weather the way it is, who's walking around the street? What density? There is no density. I saw just the same amount of people coming out of a restaurant in Westchester as I did in New York City. I've seen it, the same amount of people walking out. There's restaurants in Long Island, they're in mall areas that tons of people are walking around. So you know what? I just think it's a little unfair to categorize this that way.
Now, the New York State Restaurant Association released a report saying that by the end of the year, 2/3 of restaurants are likely to close. How do you think we recover from this?
I don't think we recover from that. Where are you going to get the funds to help those people come back? What are you going to do with all those workers? The hospitality industry employs about over 300,000 employees in New York City. More than half of our out of work right now. I know employers right now in our association who have up to 130 employees. They just let 100 of them go because they don't need that manpower right now. What do you do with those folks? If that restaurant can't come back, what do you do with those 130 people? It's not like they just go to the next restaurant. I had a former employee of mine call me that the restaurant he went to go work to, oh, the hours aren't there. Can I come back? Do you have some hours there? I said, no, I don't have hours either. You know what I mean? Like if he didn't have hours, I don't have hours. So do you see the despair that these employees are going through, especially now during the holidays, that they don't know how they're going to feed their kids? They don't know how they're going to put maybe a gift that they were promised throughout the year if they were good. So it's very difficult times right now.
And please leave us with a message on how people can continue to support the New York State Latino Bar and Lounge Association.
Well, obviously, we got to do what we got to make do with what we have. Visit your local restaurants, order takeout, pick up food to go. We really need that. And then once we open up, really talk about how safe your local restaurant is. They talk about the herd immunity thing. At least tell people, how about stay local, shop local, go to your local restaurants. You know why? Because that's the community where you're in. So if you're there, if you're not traveling, one, you're not taking the train, right? So chances are you have less contact with people, and usually walking to and from the place where you're going to go eat. So why don't we encourage that? Eating and shopping local, and maybe that can also help stop the spread. So we definitely encourage folks that the moment we open up is come to our places. Definitely use the social media platform to say how safely they feel and what the restaurant is doing to make sure that the spread of COVID is not happening in their places.
Jeffrey, thank you so much. Once again, we're speaking with Jeffrey Garcia, who is the president of the New York State Latino Restaurant Bar and Lounge Association. Thank you so much for your time. We will be right back.